Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below, your purchase and pricing email question line. For buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform, reach out to me directly by email for pricing, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. In 1998, Patek Philippe launched the 5070, then in yellow gold with black dial. It took a number of cues from a prototype aviator's watch, an oversized model, 46 millimeters in diameter from the Patek Philippe Museum, and at 42 millimeters it was considered monstrous for a dress watch launched in 1998 at Baselworld, but it was also a hit, and it became one of the defining chronograph complications of the 2000s. This watch, the gold model, the 5070G-001, was built from 2002 to 2006 with about 250 per medal per year made, according to Patek Philippe. So the watch is rare. It's also cool and a little bit low-key, as it's understated in all the best ways, but at 42 millimeters it has a wonderfully modern wrist presence. It's also fairly thin at 11.8 millimeters thick, and Patek made the watch large, but the lug-to-lug span is compact. 48.3 millimeters from lug to lug across the wrist, with the 21 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Throw it on the wrist and the watch is easy to wear, comfortable, fits beneath the cuff, and perfectly sized for my wrist. Because it's less than 50 millimeters from lug to lug, I could say that if your wrist is 14 to 15 centimeters circumference, and if your wrist is oval, think the lower limit of that range, you're going to wear this watch quite well. It's comfortable, nicely planted, the lugs arc around the edge of the wrist, so even if you're borderline, the look is elegant, not ungainly. And once again, it is a very good match for a tight cuff as it sits quite low. Taking a look at the hardware and the software. Alligator leather on the top with a lightly contrasting anthracite stitch. You can see this is a factory Patek Philippe strap in brand new condition. Black on the top with the anthracite contrasting stitch, large rectangular scale alligator leather in matte finish. You can see that the edge is shear cut, showing the layers of leather, and then it is calfskin on the underside. You have little pull tab spring bars that you find on modern Patek straps, and those allow you to quickly remove the strap using only a fingernail, so you can clean between the lugs or change the look of your watch. And then we have a folding clasp that's a single fold and high polish with a Calatrava cross buckle on the top. The timepiece features sharp case lines. This is a watch that's been refinished once or never, and the things you always look for on these 5070s is the definition in the sharp edges of the bevel in the case. And you can see the bevel of the case is relatively sharp. The bevel of the bezel is also relatively sharp and creased, and then the fluting lines of the lugs are well defined, and you can see that at all four corners. This is a watch that has been refinished, I'm going to say once or never, because it truly does look very close to factory. This is an outstanding example of the type. Now, the timepiece does use white gold, so it has a nice weight to it, but the timepiece is also nicely proportioned, so it doesn't look visually heavy. You can see rectangular shaped rounded pushers are used for the chronograph, and there's a little bit of a countersink in the case flank for the crown, so it doesn't occupy the profile quite as much as it would. Vintage-inspired rectangular pushers, and the pusher feel, thanks to excellent tuning of the column wheel, it's superb. The bezel is used to disguise the disparity between movement and case, as this was a large watch for the Lemania 2310 base movement that's employed. So you can see how this pagoda-style bezel is stepped in from the case flank, the crystal is stepped in from the bezel, and then there are two concentric circular tracks, one for gauging your seconds and minutes, and one is a tachymeter scale, and those help to create a buffer between the edge of the dial and the registers at center. It's a very well-balanced dial, and it's a stronger than usual gray. It's not really a soft silver like you'll find on a regular dress watch. It has strong gray overtones, almost like, and I always make this comparison, alubeam silver on a Mercedes AMG or Avis silver on an Audi RS. You can also see that the hands have been blackened. The numerals are also blackened. They are in white gold to resist oxidation over time. The sub-registers are sunken, and each one has a little railroad track internally. And then there is a CH2770. That's Patek's name for a highly modified Lemania 2310 about. Now, this movement in the form of the Omega 321 went to the moon. So it's the same base movement, but with a much higher standard of finish on the Patek. As you can see, the traditional Poinçon de Genève, mirrored anglage, satinated steel chronograph components, black polished screws, perfectly aligned Côte de Genève, engine turning on the base plate, and everything is to the highest standard. In particular, I love the standard of finish on the steel components of the chronograph, because those surfaces are not easy to finish. That is a very hard and resilient metal. Now, you'll appreciate that other modifications include a free sprung balance for more shock resistance and stability and more precise regulation. That versus a mobile stud index. An overcoil hairspring replaces the flat hairspring. 65-hour manual wind power reserve replaces the 48-hour power reserve. The beat rate remains slow and steady with an enormous balance beaten away at 18,000 vibrations per hour. And note the balance is almost the radius of the movement, very old school. You can also see this is a column wheel chronograph with a lateral clutch, and Patek actually considers this to be a higher-end option than its vertical clutches. Higher-level watchmakers work on the lateral clutch, more entry-level watchmakers work on the vertical clutch chronographs, and there's nothing like the feel of a high horology-tuned column wheel, which you can see here is capped in Geneva fashion because historically almost all finishing styles had their origins in functional requirements, and by capping the column wheel, it becomes hard for the beaks and horns of the chronograph components to pop out over the edge of the columns under shock. All of this pivots on 24 jewels, it's 30 meters water resistant, and it is adjusted in a truly high horology 6 positions. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.